All right. Hello there. My name is Emily Edmondson, and I am going to be sharing my interview with an expert presentation today. So, I am in this program for family and consumer sciences. So, the area that I focused on was facilities and property management. So, that is what my expert is an expert in. Um, I am in the science group for this class. So this is kind of related to science. Um, so I will explain how it is all interconnected. So family and consumer sciences, facilities and property management. So the purpose, I'm completing my residency program in middle and secondary teaching. My licensure area is family and consumer sciences. I am interviewing an expert in the field of facilities and property management, which is under the national standards for FCS education, and that is area of study 5.0. So the expert that I interviewed is Brian Byers. He is an NC State graduate, has a bachelor's of science in horticultural science. He currently works at Pine Knot Farms, which is a hellebore farm, ornamental plant nursery in Clarksville, Virginia. And he is the facilities and production manager there. And he has over 8 years of facilities, property, and production management of those plants. So not just hellebores, but other plants. But he has a lot of experience with facilities and property management and overseeing a nursery. So we conducted our interview through email. So I had taken our responses and just kind of nitpicked the main ideas back and forth, and then I'm going to explain everything. So the first question is, how do you use facilities and property management in your personal and professional life? Mr. Byers, Brian, he did explain that he doesn't really use it in his personal life as much, but he does mainly use these skills professionally in terms of keeping things on track at the nursery, keeping a good idea on what materials they need, having things on hand for staff and having them accessible, preparing for their open houses that they do a couple times a year. Those are the important day-to-day things, but he also did bring up having materials for shipping the plants and gloves and PPE during COVID. Even though they were not in a hospital or in a frontline environment or in a school or anything like that, they were still open and operating as a small business. And so they were able to get PPE, and they needed PPE so they could still work and maintain their living. So they also have to keep their space updated for safety and to stay open for business for inspection and things like that. So that's how he uses facility and property management day to day. The next question, what terms or concepts and ways of thinking are essential to the facilities and property management field? So the first thing he said was staying flexible because things can change in a heartbeat. But concepts of science and math are something that he said are extremely important. He did have to take chemistry and things like that in order to be successful in his job. But he also said that he has had to make sure that he has the ability to understand sale projections and forecasts years in advance for how the nursery might need certain materials in the future. So he has to be able to use those calculations to provide staff with certain safety precautions and safety protocols. So he's using science and math pretty often, and those are probably the largest concepts in his line of work as facilities and property management, as a manager of a plant nursery, compared to other facilities and property managers that might rely more on the ELA side of things or contracts, things like that. He's working more on the math and science side. What are the greatest challenges in the field of facilities and property management? He said that time management is probably the greatest challenge because everything needs to be done at the same time. Everything, that tends to be how life is. When it rains, it pours. So learning to prioritize those things, but also just being there for staff and understanding that as a facilities and property manager, you're also helping staff, and making sure they're safe. So you do have that responsibility as well, because if the facilities and the property aren't safe, then the staff aren't safe. So having that double fold responsibility. What is the most important thing to know about the field of facilities and property management? Mr. Byers said that it is important to know that it's important for him to stay up to date with all current events, business events, and things that could affect the facilities and property, because the world around us can heavily influence and impact those functions. And what he mainly meant by that is he did mention COVID several times. So even though COVID did not directly impact them like it would a school or a hospital or places like that, it did affect them because they were not able to get certain supplies. There were supply shortages, just like now. Right now he mentioned they are going through supply shortages. They're unable to get certain things because of ordering, and shipping and the gas prices and things like that. They are struggling to get certain supplies. So it is important for them to have local relationships and for him to have local relationships for facilities and property management, to be able to rely on almost like neighborly contact for that. And then also for them to just stay, abreast of what's going on in the world, so that they can make those projections that I mentioned earlier and understand what can affect the business and the property. What are the three main characteristics needed for facilities and property management? He said flexibility, prioritization, and safety, which we have gone over. And I did ask him, did you have a knack for facilities and property management, or did you have to learn to think like an expert? And he said he's always had an innate feeling for how things work and run, but he did have to learn about nursery facilities. So just like anybody going into a new job or anything, you do have to learn about your job. But just like anybody else working in any kind of facilities or property management or production or anything like that, you do have to learn about the exact property you're working on or facility you're working in. So for example, me as a family and consumer sciences teacher, my facility is my classroom and my property is my classroom. So I want to make sure my students are safe. So I really need to know my kitchen equipment and my classroom layout and the things around here that could affect student safety. So for him, it's really knowing the lay of the land and doing that. But he's always had a knack for knowing how to fix things and really being good in that area. So it did kind of come naturally, but at the same time, he did have to learn a little bit about the nursery facilities. And these are just a couple of main ideas that I took away. Facilities and property management is a standard that encompasses many facets of core standards. So we can, look at facilities and property management as a family consumer sciences standard that is taught but we can also look at it a little deeper and see that it does encompass a lot of the core standards. It encompasses math, it encompasses science, it encompasses ELA. We really can dissect it a little deeper and see how we need those things to function as a facilities and property management standard. Number 2, in order for things to run smoothly and safely, organization and prioritization are key, which we've talked about. And lastly, facilities management can be in any field. So I think when we think about facilities and property management, for me, when I first picked this topic, I thought, okay, I need to find an expert that is in construction or is in an apartment complex or something residential, something housing, or commercial development, something that, for me, facilities and property management just sounds very construction based. And then I was like, no, let me go a little bit further down the science route. And so I thought plants, and that's how I found this expert. But for me, I realized that facilities management is in every field. Our facilities managements in our schools are our janitorial, our custodial staff. They run our facilities. Our property management, they exist in every single place that we go. We just don't see them. So it is really interesting from a CTE perspective to show our students that this is something that is available and that can be in any field. You just have to kind of dig a little deeper to see where those things are. And these are my references. So I really hope you enjoyed the presentation and the interview. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me.